what this current shortage, if you like, is pointing out is that companies that lead well, manage well, are the ones that are going to retain people. If they look after their people, and I don't mean to mollycoddle them, but if they look after them in terms of providing opportunities for development and growth and listen to their employees, that they're going to retain them more likely.
Good morning, HR. I'm Mike Coffey, and this is the podcast where I talk to business leaders about bringing people together to create value for shareholders, customers, and the community. Please follow, rate, and review Good Morning HR on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, or at goodmorninghr.com. As the post-COVID, hopefully, Great Resignation continues. Many employers are scrambling to keep their best employees from jumping ship while working feverishly to attract star employees from other firms. So how have employees and job seekers' expectations changed over the last 18 months? What are they looking for in their next role? And what's really brought about this change, if it's really all that different of a change? Well, my guest today is Brian Hinchliffe. Brian is the Vice President of the Dallas office of Keystone Partners, where he helps professionals in career transition navigate the job market. With a deep background in recruitment and talent management, Brian has a front row seat to the current recruiting landscape. Welcome to Good Morning HR, Brian.
Good morning and welcome. Thank you for the welcome. Yes.
So, do you think all this talk of the Great Resignation, is this a real thing, or are we just making a mountain out of a molehill?
No, it seems to be a real thing, and it's also been called the Great Retirement as well. So I think it's something about what's happened during the pandemic has triggered in people a rethinking about what work looks like and whether they want to be part of it. There have been a range of complicating factors that some of which have seemed to have gone away. For example, there were enhanced unemployment benefits that did keep some people apparently out of the workforce for up until around September. I think it also highlighted that perhaps some pay levels were really too low. If you could afford to be home on unemployment benefits, wow, that means you're probably not getting paid terribly much when you're at work. But yeah, it's a little mystifying. The people I meet, who are the people that have been let go by their employers, they're in the main rarer to get back into work. So, but I think there's definitely something going on there. It's just not entirely clear what it is yet.
As you're talking to job seekers, have their expectations changed, or what they're looking for in their next role? Is it significantly different than what they've experienced or had in the past?
I don't think that's changed significantly. The majority of people that I talk to are wanting to do something similar to what they've been doing throughout their career, perhaps building on their career path to date. There's always been a smaller number that are looking to leverage their transferable skills into a new role, new industry, new location, or combination of those range of factors. And there's always been a few that are looking to really consider entrepreneurship as an option, where they might not, which they've had perhaps in the back of their mind for a number of years, and suddenly they're in a situation where they've got a chance to review and think about what they want to do going forward. I love that as a career coach, that people are happy to, the people that are happy to really look at their career in a broad sense. I liken it to standing on the edge of the Grand Canyon. And I'll ask people, so what do you see? And the general answer is, I see a panorama. And it's not until you get the binoculars out that you can really start to focus on the eagle soaring in the sky, or the people on the mules down in the foot of the floor of the canyon. So that's what I like to do, is help them go from that panorama into some sort of focus.
The that panorama. I'm from Texas, so I say panorama. But
I'm sorry, I'm from somewhere else.
yeah, I noticed that. But has a lot of options, and I did see that. I think it was in the Wall Street Journal last week in an article that more small businesses were started in the last 12 months than any other time in recent history. So,
Wow.
so that
Good to see
makes
that.
sense. And I know a number of folks who've said, well, you know, I'm not taking any more risk by starting my own shop than I am working for an employer,
Mm-hmm.
independent on what happens with COVID or anything else. So it may well be that that's an option. When you're talking to job seekers, are you seeing, are they being more selective right now, or are they? You mentioned some are looking for, or even considering self-employment. Um, do they seem to be more selective than they've been in the past, or less, maybe because of extended unemployment and just thicker bank accounts, less anxious about not finding a job right away?
No, I don't think that I haven't noticed a significant change in that. I think there are some people who are always highly anxious. They or certainly come into this pretty anxious because somebody's made a decision that's affected their livelihood, their family, their life, their career, and they've got to sort of get over that in order to move on to actually take advantage of what they've been presented with, which is an opportunity to rethink what they're doing, particularly if they have the benefit of a nice little chunk of severance that can give them a little bit of comfort. But I think it just reflects any one person's own set of priorities and nervousness about change or embracing of change at the other extreme. So I think it maybe it just exacerbates that, at least initially. And so I don't know that has changed terribly much. I think that people are the thing that I've learned is that people have, as many people as I meet have that many different views and approaches to life. So my challenge is to take an approach that is going to tailor to their particular needs and interests.
And I think that's a mistake a lot of HR folks make. We tend to say, "Oh, these millennials are this way, or these zennials are this way, or this group of people, have these attitudes," and maybe we're doing that excessively right now, just about what people who are leaving jobs or what the job market looks like. We may be overgeneralizing and causing our own panic a little bit on the employer side.
It could be, yeah. I Yeah, there is certainly a shortage of people. I mean, you look at the numbers say that there are more open jobs at a macro level than there are people available to fill them.
Mm-hmm.
The problem for the people that I work with is at the micro level. That What does that mean? Doesn't mean anything really, because if I can't find a job, something's different.
So
I mean,
yeah, they've got to find that one job that's unique for their skill set and experience,
right,
and
right.
where they want to go with the next step in their career.
Yeah, that's right. I am seeing probably a higher incidence of people getting multiple offers and being able to negotiate. And I think that some are realizing that they have got negotiability that they might not have had last time they changed jobs, because there is that shortage. I'm seeing too that employers on the whole are speeding things up in order not to lose a good candidate. I've seen exceptions to that, and they tend to be the very large companies that say, well, we'll do things at our pace, and if we lose somebody, that's okay. Everybody wants to come and work for our company. That may be a little bit of, I don't know what that is, laziness on their part, or a little bit of naivety, in fact, about the current climate.
Yeah, I think the larger organizations don't tend to be as nimble. They're more ossified in what their processes are,
Yeah,
and it's hard to
yeah,
change. It's hard to change process.
yeah,
And
and
it's definitely a seller's market right now. If you've got labor, and
yep,
there's a lot more demand for it.
that's right, that's right.
So the candidates you're working with, I'm assuming most of them were laid off at some point over the recession. What are you seeing? Was it recession over COVID? What are you seeing as far as the reasons for layoffs right now? Are we still seeing layoffs coming along because of uncertainty around COVID and those kind of things, or are we moving? Is it or companies just having supply chain issues? Those, or what's driving those layoffs right now?
I would think that the major reason, and it's been the predominant reason for the last however many years, has been just the good old reorganization. Maybe there's a merger or an acquisition, some organizational change that means that we rethink who we need and where we need them.
Yeah. Okay.
That seems to be the case, and has been the case for as long as really for the last number of years.
And technology is, I know a lot of employers made big investments in technology over the last year and a half, and there's probably new efficiencies there where maybe they need that, they need three people with this skill set, but not nine, and
Yeah,
those
yeah.
kind of services.
But the same thing that has been happening where we've got three groups of people around the country and we decide to consolidate everything into one centre. Now, because of our willingness now, as a result of the pandemic, to consider remote location, that doesn't necessarily mean that people lose their job, because if they're happy to be, if the company's able to cope with the fact that they're in a different location, so that maybe help them to stay. What we've noticed in the career transition space, and I think it's certainly not a secret in our little industry, is that there are far fewer layoffs taking place in the last 6 to 9 months. This calendar year, probably. It's quite unusual. Now that may catch up as companies get a little more confident about where things are going in 2022. But then we were saying that in 2021, as we came into 2021. Well, that'll be different. If that was 2020, this is 2021. Well, things haven't been quite as different as we hoped they might be.
Yeah, and so much of it just depends on what the economy does, and
That's right.
if
Yeah.
supply chain doesn't get itself unraveled, and if inflation continues to rise, labor is going to become more
Yeah.
expensive, and yeah, we may be may be making some hard choices in the next 18 months.
I think something like that's probably going to happen. But what it is, the economists can prognosticate about it, but we'll find out as a result of that.
And let's take a quick break. Good Morning HR is brought to you by Imperative, premium background checks with fast and friendly service. If you're an HRCI or SHRM certified professional, this episode of Good Morning HR has been pre-approved for 1/2 hour of recertification credit. To obtain the recertification information, visit goodmorninghr.com and click on Recert Credits. Then select episode 24 and enter the keyword talent That's TALENT. 23 years ago, I founded Imperative to partner with risk averse companies in making well informed decisions about the people they involve in their business. We've identified the most common ways background check companies cut corners that impact the quality, accuracy, and depth of the information they provide employers. And their clients aren't even aware of these issues until something goes wrong. You can download the 6 questions you should ask of your background check vendor at imperativeinfo.com/6. And of course, you can always reach out to Imperative to discuss your background check process through our website at imperativeinfo.com. And now back to my conversation with Brian Hinchliffe. So if I'm an employer in the current market, how important is the ability for employees to work remote at the professional class that you're dealing with? Do they really care about working remote or in a hybrid situation, or are they just as happy to come into the office?
I think that the answer to that question is as different as people are different.
Okay.
I know people. I was talking to somebody only yesterday, and he went back into the office the moment he could. He just likes being in the office. I think other people who prefer to work on their own have been much happier and perhaps more productive working remotely. But it's exacerbated some mental health issues for some people as well. That's become a factor also. So I think what I'm seeing, or assuming is going to happen, at least in the next few years, will be that there'll be that hybrid model that everybody's talking about. A few days at home each week and a couple of days in the office. And
which doesn't bode well for commercial real estate. If I've only got a third of my workforce in at any given time, I might be concerned about. I may not need all that square footage.
Well, in fact, I had a gentleman that I worked with probably now 18 months ago at the beginning of the pandemic, and he had been in the franchise industry from a property standpoint, commercial real estate. He saw an opportunity. I'm not sure that he stuck with it ultimately, but he actually had a business that he reoriented towards helping companies renegotiate their leases because they needed fewer square feet, or fewer bodies. Yeah,
maybe a hot business in the next as leases continue to and
yeah,
then once they start to expire in the next few years.
yeah. I know anecdotally of a number of companies that have seen that as an opportunity.
What are you seeing current companies or what would you tell an employer that's concerned about their employees jumping ship, looking at other opportunities? It's hard to speak, because they need to know, their specific industries and all that. But are you seeing practices that are more favorable or more attractive to the current job seekers that's in one company versus another?
Not so much that, but I think overall that what this current shortage, if you like, is pointing out is that companies that lead well, manage well, are the ones that are going to retain people. If they look after their people, and I don't mean to mollycoddle them, but if they look after them in terms of providing opportunities for development and growth and listen to their employees, that they're going to retain them more likely than because there's always going to be companies that won't do that. And so I think just good management practices will always win out, and people respond to that.
I saw a study last week, and I'm saying this off the top of my head, but I think it was that people who change jobs have lower job satisfaction as late as 18 months after changing jobs. That it's at least it takes that long before they have a job satisfaction that's equal to where they were before. And so I think the grass is always greener. We get into a difficult circumstance sometimes and we want to see change, and we just take change for the sake of change. And especially if somebody's not working with a coach like you who and they just see this opportunity and they don't have the tools at hand to think through a process, that could be a real challenge for them. What kind of, when you're working with your clients, what kind of conversations do you have around how, what's the best way to evaluate an opportunity? Is this the right fit for me?
What I always encourage people to do is take a total reward concept when they're evaluating an opportunity. So it's not just the dollars, it's not just the tangibles, it's the intangibles as well. And I love it when people will consider that and look at the culture and try to figure out, particularly if they're feeling a little burnt, a little bit harmed by the fact that they were laid off by somebody else, that without their ability to influence that, and despite their good performance perhaps.
We get our feelings hurt, and when we lose an opportunity, and our reaction is to, jump into the next thing we have available without thinking through all the ins and outs of.
Yeah, well, what I think where I was going with that was more the other way, that some people see, having had that negative experience, they want to make sure that the next one is a positive one, and they really want to think through and get the right fit in the next place that they go. Because there were people changing jobs all last year, all through 2020. We had a good flow of people landing, but it was a sort of a laborious process because companies were working out how to do it with Zoom interviews and all of that. And I'm an example of somebody that joined Keystone nearly 2 years ago, but to this date, I've only met a handful of my colleagues face to face, because most of them are up in the Massachusetts area, Chicago, those places like that. And Dallas was the 10th office that we opened. So there are now two of us down here. So it's been nice to actually meet a few of the people face to face. But I've gotten to know people despite that sort of Zoom approach.
I've been amazed by how well Zoom has really worked.
Yeah.
It's I still think it's horrible for delivering education, especially if it's very complex or takes a lot of time. But for short collaboration efforts, I think it's we went remote and we're staying remote forever. And I own my office building, and I've got to figure out what to do with all my office.
I know that.
But it's worked well for my team. But let's talk about, you mentioned those Zoom interviews, and how does, as an employer, any advice on preparing to, if you're still in a place where you're either somebody's remote and you don't want to fly them in, or it's still, I was just in DC last week and they're still locked down. You wear a mask everywhere you go, and I got scolded at Starbucks a couple times because I just flat forgot. I'm here in Texas, man. I'm kissing strangers on the mouth. I don't even, I'm not wearing masks, and it just took me a while to get used to it. But so there's places where you just can't, where people aren't going to be comfortable meeting face to face. Any advice on conducting Zoom interviews in a way that's more effective?
I think giving the candidate some better instructions about what to expect is always a good thing. But then, that's always been the issue that, and part of the coaching that we give to our clients is to find out who you're going to be interviewing with. Is it a one-on-one? If you're going to interview with 4 people on Tuesday morning, is it going to be 4 half-hour separate interviews, or is it going to be 2 hours of 4 people all together? Because that has a big bearing on, of course, on the dynamics of the meeting. If you've got people firing questions from all directions, or do you have a more consistent, well thought out approach?
So basically, the problems are people problems, and the technology is just a different venue for delivering them.
Yeah. So I do, almost all of our meetings with our clients for the last year and a half have, of course, been via Zoom or Teams or one of the online approaches. And so one of the reasons I like to see my client on video is not that so they can see my face. They don't need that, but so that I can see how they're coming across. I had a meeting this morning with somebody, and I said, "Oh, you're in silhouette mode, are you?" And it was just this head. I couldn't make out any facial features at all because of the where he was sitting in relation to the window and no lighting on his face.
Yeah, and after well over a year of Zoom, you would think people would have that stuff figured out. But even on the podcast here, we've had some issues where people didn't quite understand just the basic stuff about lighting and using the camera and the mic the right way. So I guess we're all learning, I guess, on our own scale.
Yeah, another gentleman that I worked with, and every time I'd talk to him, there'd be this sort of intermittent screeching, and he's an engineer, and I spoke to him today, and he said, "Oh yeah, I finally figured that out. It was the autofocus on the webcam kept wanting kept causing this screeching effect. So he just disabled the autofocus, and he was fine. But he was grateful that I pointed it out because he'd had the problem in an interview, and that's not a good thing. I can put up with it. That doesn't worry me particularly, but he doesn't want anything to distract from how he performs in the interview.
And you definitely want an engineer to be a good problem solver, and so he needs to know he's got a problem.
Yeah.
One last question: if a company is in a position where they're going to lay off some employees and are looking at an outplacement service, what are the benchmarks or what are the characteristics to make sure your employees get a good quality service and as they exit and feel good about the company's efforts to help them be successful as they move on? What should you look for in an outplacement firm?
Well, I obviously price comes into it, but to my way of thinking, there's been too much emphasis on low cost, and sometimes when you save money, have you actually saved money or have you wasted the money you've spent? So I think the thing that Keystone prides itself on is a mix of technology and via portal. In fact, we're about to release our new portal. We're testing it at the moment. A mix of technology and the one-on-one, the high-touch, high-tech approach is what you need, and a company that will work with you to understand your needs as a company, not just for the people that are leaving, but think about the survivors, the people that are staying. They're going to decide whether or not they're mad with you and maybe leave themselves, depending on how they see you treat the people, their friends who you've let go. And there's, as somebody once said, and this is a long time ago, there's no right way to do layoff. There's a least wrong way. So finding the least wrong way, whatever that looks like, is critical. And having us involved in coaching your managers to deliver the notification, and having us involved in the actual delivery of the notification, being there on the day of, is usually a much leads to a much better outcome.
Yeah, that would be a whole episode to itself, and it would probably be worth revisiting. Just that whole process, especially if we start to see more layoffs come up. But that's all the time we have today. Thanks for joining us, Brian.
Thanks very much, Mike. Enjoyed it.
And thank you for listening. You can find previous episodes, show notes, and contact info for our guests at goodmorninghr.com or on Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube. And don't forget to follow us wherever you get your podcasts. Rob Upchurch is our technical producer, and Imperatives Marketing Coordinator, Katie Bautista, keeps the trains running on time. And I'm Mike Coffey. As always, don't hesitate to reach out if I can be of service to you personally or professionally. I'll see you next week, and until then, be well, do good, and keep your chin up.